is Oskar. I'm a physician, inventor, and digital health entrepreneur. And I'd like to talk today a bit more about myself, my journey, my most recent company called CardioCube, and also some of the key learnings I have, from this journey. Starting from the beginning, that's me in med school. As you can see, I had a bit more hair on the top of my head. Uh, this photo was taken somewhere in 2013 or 2014. And, I've fallen in love with cardiology. And while going for different rotations to different wards, I've noticed CHF patients, so congestive heart failure patients, really struggling after being discharged from the hospital. And so, we as doctors have most of the things under control, and we know the right procedures for those patients. But once they go home, the therapy is quite complicated, and so I started to look for a solution to help them stick to the therapy and to stay safe at home. I thought it'll be great to create some kind of alarming sign and a device playing sounds in the right moment of the day when they should either take a given medication or perform a given measurement. And so the very first prototype of CardioCube was literally a white cube. It was a physical device made of plastic with a bunch of electronics inside. And it was having a very kind of simple application of playing alarm signs at a given moment of the day. But I, started to think how to automate this. And, especially after listening to the first couple of patients, I implemented these solutions, in their homes. One of them said, I felt that Dr. Oskar is with me at home, and he would be sad if I don't take my pills on a daily basis. That was my aha moment when I realized that this gentleman, started to actually create a emotional relationship with this very simple white box, and thought it's Dr. Oskar. So I thought, okay, how we can create a really bidirectional conversational experience so that we can have a two-sided experience and communication. And it was then 2016, and there was already a growing market for the so-called voice-first devices. Right now, we have over 1 billion devices that provide a voice assistant access. You can see on the photo some of the most popular ones. I'm personally a real maniac. I have around 10 Alexas in my home, in every room. And that was still in Europe. It was in Berlin. We launched our company in the beginning of 2017, raised our first round, and looked for the right product market fit. We really struggled in Europe at that moment. So we then later on decided to move to Los Angeles, and we started to work with Cedars-Sinai. That is one of the biggest health systems in Southern California. And we conducted our first really big clinical trial when we used our voice software layer on top of Amazon Echo Alexa. And it was used in examination rooms to automate some of the tasks in the process of taking medical history. We then also, given Alexa plus CardioCube to some of the patients to take it to their homes. And so, medical history was taken on a continuous basis and then was pasted literally in the same place where a human being would create a note in an EHR, in a chart. We wrote a couple of scientific papers. One of them was published in the International Journal of Medical Informatics. And the outcome was that CardioCube can collect, index, and document medical data using a voice interface. We tried, with things that are that seem to be administrative, then moved on to things that require more medical skills to understand and process. And patients has given us a lot of feedback, just like before. And a comment that was really kind of in 80 or 90% of cases was, I would like to also use it for my primary care and scheduling the appointments, so technical tasks. And since heart diseases are also managed in 60 to 70% by primary care physicians, we thought, okay, let's also to progress and start working with family physicians. One of our biggest client became Family Care Network, located in Bellingham in the state of Washington. That's a small independently run network. And so we decided to move to Seattle to start working even closer with the Amazon Alexa team, and also start working with our partners on the ground. And we wanted to help those clinics, and especially FCN, with driving down costs connected with congestive heart failure patients monitoring and the management of the disease. Also, providing better access to care across, even the wider population of patients with an application like, the mentioned before, say, check-in skill or scheduling the visits. And third of all, we were trying to find with the inefficiencies that was done by different API integrations with the already run systems. And I said before, the biggest project was on congestive heart failure and automating the check-in process. That's one of the comments from the physicians working on this project on the side of FCN. And now I'd like to tell you about a couple of my learnings from this project, from the company. CardioCube, CardioCube founders, I had 4 co-founders, decided that we want to sell the company and our tech IP in the beginning of 2021. There was an option for scaling this into other states, but we then later on started to work with a bigger company who would later on use our tech as one of the puzzles in their bigger system. Lesson learned number 1 was a pretty obvious one, but still a lot of startups forget about the right focus. So I found out that doing a very small piece of functionality and starting with doing one thing extremely well is probably the most important thing in a startup life, and also building innovation in healthcare. As you can see here, we started with different microservices. We had care management, provider portal, peripheral devices. But we realized later on that our key competitive advantage was really always about the care management. And so we started to build around it. The second lesson learned was focusing on the product flow. So once we realized where lies our core value, that was voice AI working for CHF, and then basically speaking, chronic disease patients, we started to add another layers. So another layer was, for instance, peripheral devices. So also, integrating through one of our APIs with a bunch of devices giving us numerical data like smartwatches, blood pressure monitors, or smart scales. And then third of all, adding a so-called patient portal. So something really critical during the pandemic when most of the visits went to the virtual world. The third lesson, and I guess the one that realized that helped us realize to turn also into the employer market, was that in order to change the healthcare, it's so much easier to do it creating a healthcare service, and so like a tech-enabled service with a very strong value proposition than just a tiny product. It's great to start doing one thing extremely well in the beginning, but then later on, it's like the best solution to build a service around it. And that's how CardioCube finally became this virtual care that was a web-based portal allowing patients to connect with healthcare providers through video calls. And then also care management software that was the system that aggregated health history in one place and optimized treatment by automating conversations using voice AI. So these are kind of the 3 top learnings. After selling the company, I decided to start my own podcast called Digisection. Digisection is all about helping young entrepreneurs to understand the building blocks of healthcare innovation. And so it's already aired on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, where I'm inviting one of the top-notch healthcare executives, entrepreneurs, and founders. And Digisection is coming actually, from two words, so digital, and the other section. That is kind of a symbol for taking different slice approaches and angles to the same problems and looking at healthcare from different perspectives. This is my website. That's also a direct contact, my email, if you'd like to ask more questions. And I'm also more than happy to engage into a conversation right now.
Thank you so much, Oskar. I especially liked all your lessons learned. There's a lot of people in our audience right now who work a lot with entrepreneurs, and I think they identify with what you're saying about needing to focus. It's really hard though when you're, you just never know where the opportunities are, especially when you're younger. I really, when I was researching the article to talk about this presentation, I really saw that you see AI as the way that doctors can capture more time away from doing the administration, which I know is doing, promoting a lot of doctor burnout right now, is that they often feel like they're doing more note taking than actually meeting with patients. And then I think what I've also understood is that, especially from your presentation today, is that I think patients feel more empowered so that they're able to reach out and maybe get some of the information that they need. Do you want to speak a little bit more about what you see about AI doing for us as we transition into a more tech market for healthcare?
Sure. Yeah. I think the key perspective we should understand is that, AI could really help physicians practice in a way that we always should have been practicing. So spending more face time with patients, doing less of the administrative work, and as you just said before, to help to connect with patients. So I think that in the early years of developing new technologies, there are always some comments that it could either take jobs or be purely technocratic for the patient. But I think it's something totally opposite to that. So from my observation and also our system implementations, we've noticed that the more tech, of course, tech presenting the right value for the patient, we implement, the more, purely medical value the patient can get, and also the more time they can spend with the physician discussing the problems, not running through the chart and discussing things that already, for instance, were discussed on the previous meeting. And also, analyzing data from in between the appointments and scheduled visits. So I think that's, point number one, creating more time and a better connection and bond, both in the primary care setting and with a specialist like a cardiologist. And, second of all, I'm huge believer in voice AI. It's still super early for Alexa, and we still use voice interfaces for very basic things like playing Spotify, ordering pizza or Uber. But CardioCube was one of the first movers who became a HIPAA compliant software working on top of a voice assistant, and then we started to deliver kind of more and more complicated medical conversations. We had to do that in many ways through our own solutions and engines we created. But I do believe that it's going to be even more scalable in the future, and that this market of third-party developers for Alexa, for Siri, will grow in the next 4 to 5 years.
Thank you. And I personally, I would really welcome an ability to do some of the scheduling, like some of the other patients that you worked with. I know that some of the trying to connect with your care provider can be sometimes really difficult, surprisingly difficult. I'm going to open this up and ask if there's anybody else who would like to ask a question right now. Oh, the dreaded wall of silence. Okay. All right. So Oskar, I loved your podcast. I listened to a few of the episodes this past weekend. What have you learned from meeting with other tech founders? And healthcare is so hard for entrepreneurs. So what kind of lessons are you learning about that?
It's a great question. So the first lesson was that um, it takes at least 5 to 10 years of building things till you succeed. There's a great story about the Rowe company, so Roman Health founder. His name is Zach, and had so many different ideas in the companies before, and people thought that it's an overnight success, but it was actually 10 years in building. Also, many of the other founders, like from my podcast, Frank Westerman, the founder of My Sugar, then sold to Raj. He built, a really great solution that first of all helped him. He was a patient having diabetes, and then so many others, and scaled it to over 30 or 40 countries. It took him like 8 years, so you really need to validate your ideas and thesis and product features one by one till the moment when it gives enough value, so you can see this hockey stick growth. So it takes time. It's also very capital intensive. We need much more money for the development of our companies in digital health, compared say to marketing products or things that could be bootstrapped and made by two people sitting in a garage. We still need certifications. We need to make sure things are safe to use. Yeah, and the third thing is working with health systems and hospital requires also a great knowledge of the health system. So it took me a while, and also all of the other founders I was talking with on the podcast, to understand how healthcare, the complexity of healthcare system from the inside. And so, I thought, I get it. I'm a physician, but it's totally different while you're doing it, from the provider side than the administrator side, and also, the tech developer side, when you actually have to understand all those stakeholders worlds.
It is astonishing to me to hear from you that you also found it complex, because I mean, it's the piece that I hear most from startups is that they never expect that the alignment and trying to figure out who actually makes a key decision could be so difficult. So it's really fascinating. I see that Julie has a question in the chat, and she says, "Thank you so much for your presentation. Did you encounter any data privacy issues or concerns with CardioCube?"
Sure, that's a great question. So many patients ask us, okay, so I'm talking with Alexa, or I'm messaging your doctor. What is going to happen with my data? So that was one of the also key things and priorities for our dev team and our legal officers, to first of all do a full setup of the infrastructure that is compliant with both HIPAA and GDPR. So we wanted to be compliant with both European and US market. We finally ended up only working on that in the US, but we wanted to be ready to scale. And so we made sure we have the right infrastructure. Then second of all, we created ways of actually making the data anonymous for the system, and making the only place where you can match a given number and characteristic of a given patient only inside of the EHR. So only it were the provider's eyes seeing this data matched. Patients were having concerns at times about Alexa as an interface, but once we get through the HIPAA certification and the program also run by Amazon, that was so much easier. So we kind of were able to work on that concerns, and I think we did a great job.
Awesome. Wonderful. So, I see that there's a variety of different people here. We have investors, we have entrepreneurs, we have ecosystem builders. One of the things that I like to ask, I've shamelessly borrowed it from the 1 Million Cups, is what we could do for you. So I know that you're not done yet. You have lots of other ideas that you're going to work on. What could this community or another community like this in Seattle or help you with?
Thank you for asking this question. So yeah, so after launching the podcast and looking for new perspectives, I first of all received a couple of opportunities to work with big corporates in the Valley, but I thought it'll be great to work on something that I'm really deeply fascinated with, and this space is mental health. So I'm right now, working on a new project and my own new company in the space of mental health. Also putting to work some of the experiences I had with voice interfaces during the times of CardioCube. And so we're, as the new company, we're in a so-called stealth mode, meaning we have to figure out a lot of things. But we're analyzing right now, deeply the problems of the mental health space. And so, I'd love to understand, the opportunities of testing out solutions in the mental health space, mainly connected with depression and anxiety in your ecosystems and in Alaska.
Awesome. Thank you for that ask. I'm working on a number of similar pilot projects, and I'd be totally happy to connect you with some of the organizations that I'm working with. So is there anybody else who's with us today who has something to add?
Hi, Oscar. Thank you for this presentation. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Lizette.
No, you go. I'm going to do something. I'm going to go a different direction. You go.
I don't know if it's the same direction or not now that I think of it. I'm curious. I'm not in the healthcare space at all, but there is so much innovation happening, and it's really cool to see all of the different ideas and melding of different industries and solutions coming together. My background is in tech, and so seeing a lot of these products come out just makes me very happy that it's going to better use. What are some of the trends or products that you're seeing out there that we should be keeping an eye out for?
Great question. So, the first trend is definitely the consumerization of healthcare. It's something that we see all around, from Hims and Hers to Roman to all the other SPAC companies from the first quarter of 2021. From our own perspectives and perspective as a user, I think that, especially in the mental health space, there's so many things that we can use as users, people, patients, on a daily basis to actually stay healthy. And so the space of, I would say, prevention and staying healthy solutions is growing. It started, for instance, in mental health space, at Headspace or as Calm. So, doing yoga, deep breathing, or listening to some guided meditation. Now it's so much more. There are very specialized apps for, say, depression connected with IBS. It's a project done by one of my friends from Vegas. So I think that, most companies are trying to get into a very, very specific niche. And so the giants are, trying to take over the market, like they mentioned Hims and Hers, by, pharmacy delivery combined with a very specific kind of medical service that is mostly subscription based. Whereas I've noticed that, a lot of the smaller players and smaller startups are getting deeply into a very specific niche. I'm happy about it as a doctor because, for a long time, we just had the main problems being covered and all of the less popular diseases forgotten. So I think it's a good trend. And and the third thing is AI-driven interfaces. It could be a chatbot, it could be voice AI. I know it's still early for voice, but I think we're slowly getting there. And different parts of understanding the data and making sense out of it. I could just go through the whole market segmentation, but I think these are the main three things.
Awesome, thank you. Lizette, can you ask your question and then we'll probably wrap
So-
up. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is a good question for wrap up. So I don't get to talk to people from Krakow who are in Krakow, Poland, hardly ever. So it's spring there, right? Because you're above the equator. So you're going into spring. What's the temperature like? And I just think it's so cool that you're in Krakow and we're in Alaska, and I'm just intrigued. Temperature.
Okay, so it's been around 25 to 30 centigrades. I'm sorry to operate in Celsius. I have a European
So
brain.
60s. So it's in the 60s. So
Yeah,
Fahrenheit
it's
in the 60s.
60. Yeah, so it's 60, 70 Fahrenheit. That's right. That's right. Yeah. So we have like a really beautiful spring. It wasn't that good like in May. So I planned initially to spend here just 1 month. It then turned out to 2. Now it's going to be close to 3. That's mainly because of my fiance who was here. So she made me do that. But yeah, but the weather is good, and we also, you know, trying to get out of the lockdown here. I would say it's not as quick as in some of the US states, but the situation is better.
So thank you. That did take us a different direction. Thank you, Lizette. Elizabeth.
But I have to say that you're the second person I've talked to from Poland today, from, well, the Ukraine today, which is just unusual. This morning at 7 o'clock. So,
Wow.
And now,
really
Elizabeth
cool.
and Oskar, do you know one another at all? No. Okay. So Elizabeth, you joined a little bit late, but Oskar is actually based in Seattle. And I'd like to, Elizabeth, maybe you would like to tell us a little bit about what you're working on.
I'll be sensitive to the time, and I apologize for arriving late. But I did have a chance to look at your information on LinkedIn, and I also looked at your YouTube channel there. So I am working with Apis Health Angels, which is a new startup for incubating investors as well as supporting new founders in a sort of 6-month education program that culminates with the investors making an investment of $200,000 into a new company. And I'd be glad to send you my contact information so we can carry it up. But one of the things that I think we're trying to do is Jacqueline's doing the same thing in a way in Alaska, connecting with the whole infrastructure of other people. And I'm doing the same thing to try and my goal is to float all these health initiatives and ensure that we get you connected to people who can move your process along. And so any connections that I have in mental health, I'd be glad to share with you, or digital health, or the fact that there's now a CDL, Creative Destructive Lab, here in Seattle at the University of Washington. So that may be something that's interesting for it. It sort of has been, that organization has been around in a variety of different cities, but we've just introduced it here in Seattle.
Nice.
Great,
Awesome.
thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And I have to say, this is exactly why we do these open innovations, because we never know where these connections will help us. And Oskar was just telling us that really that long lead way for healthcare startups is a challenge. And so having that connection to you is really helpful. So thank you. Thank you all very much for taking time. I don't know what it's like in Krakow, Poland, but we have a saying in Alaska, it's summer in Alaska. It usually means that if people are missing, they're off fishing or hunting or out in the woods. So I just appreciate everybody being here today. And thank you very much, Oskar. This won't be our last conversation, I'm sure. It's been wonderful to have you, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really fun, and I hope to connect more and to visit Alaska finally.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
I want to come
More than
back.
welcome. All right, take care of it, everyone, and we'll see you in 2 weeks for Health by Open Innovation.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Awesome. If Lizette, if you want to just hang on, we could just talk if you want. Or
Oh, yeah, let's do. Let's
Okay.
do. That'd be great. Oh,
Okay.
yeah, and then I can actually see you. So,
Yeah, sure, you bet. And anybody else is welcome. Jim, it was wonderful to have you here. Melanie, always welcome. Erin, super nice to have you here. And while we're doing that, I can look up the anybody, if you have anything that you want to chime in, I think Lizette was going to follow up following the meeting, and all of you are more than welcome to stay or to connect with me soon. I'm going to look up the company that I was telling you about, whose name I couldn't quite remember. So
Jacqueline, how about if I call you?
Oh, sounds like a good plan.
Let me
Okay.
call you. Let me call you.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you so much for joining everyone today, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye now.